Hey guys, it's John, and I am here with Ciera and Martha from The Stars Made Me Do It. And I got to tell you, you guys have probably heard the interview I did on their podcast a while back. I know I've put it on my channel a couple of times because people always ask me about my stars, and so I constantly refer to that podcast as a great example of what my stars look like. So, but I thought it'd be great to have them come on here today. And since that podcast, there's been a shuffle of hosts over there at Stars Maybe Do It. And we only have 2/3 of the trio here today, but we're hoping to have all three of them on Spirit Cafe in the near future. So, but let me introduce you guys to Ciera and Martha. Hello, guys. How are you today?
Hello. Thanks for having us.
I am so
thank
excited.
you so much.
I'm so excited you guys are here. So excited you guys are here because it was a really fun interview, number one.
Yeah, no, we had such a fun time. Like that when you were on our podcast, you were with the original co-host, Tara, my cousin. And then Tara has since retired from the podcast. And we have the two new adoptive moms, Martha and Mimi. And we're hoping that Mimi will be able to join for our next chat. But yeah, you were our first interview of someone who we'd never met before. And it was really fun. And it was kind of, in my learning stages of really, like, I consider myself an astrologer now, and I was still a little bit in the learning stages when you came on last year. And it was so like rewarding to get to chat with you and give you a little bit of an overview of your chart. And then you'd be like, that makes sense. That makes sense. That hits. And that was it was just such a great episode. And you were on our Gemini season. We knew you'd be a great chatter because you're a Gemini.
Yeah. I get blamed about that a lot. Yeah. I'm a talker.
But that's great when you're a podcaster. As soon as we have Geminis on, we're like, oh, no worries. We don't need to plan anything. They're just going to talk the whole time. And it's awesome to listen to. So I loved listening to that episode, which I was not there, but I got to listen to it, which is a nice change sometimes to be able to listen to the podcast.
Isn't that true? There are times I wish I could just listen to mine.
I'm kind of guilty to still listen to it sometimes, to be honest.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny when I first started, and I'm sure you guys have gone through this as well. When you first start doing them, you kind of beat yourself up about it. It's like, is it good? Is it, I can't say ums or uhs. And and you start to beat yourself up. And the best piece of advice I ever got let me give you a little interesting background. I was a comedy sword fighting comedian at Renaissance festivals all over the world. And my first year going on the road as a sword fighting comedian, my comedy partner and I, as a sword fighter, you have to have a partner. We would finish a show, we'd go backstage, and we would just rip the show apart. And why didn't we do this? Why did this didn't work? Why come they didn't laugh there? So on and so forth. And there's a famous magician. He's famous for busking. He's a very well-known busker named Magical Mystical Michael. And we were sharing a stage with Magical Mystical Michael. And we're backstage and we're tearing our show apart. He walked back and he was a New Yorker. He says, Hey, stop watching your show. It's good. Stop watching your show. And it's funny because when we stopped watching the show and we stayed in the moments, the good stuff stuck and the bad stuff went away naturally. Yeah. And so it's the same thing with podcasting. It's the same thing with video editing. Just do it. And the good stuff will stick and the bad stuff will go away.
It's so true. Just like thinking about, because like I do the audio editing and just thinking about first starting and how I used to look at those little like up and down, like, oh, my voice is too low there. My voice is too high there. Got to even it out. And I had this one moment where it was the longest episode yet. I had just finished and the entire program crashed and I lost everything. And I went into it was a downward spiral. I was just like, that took hours. And then what I did was I was like, okay, I can't dedicate that time to editing this again. So what I'm going to do is I like bullet journaling. I got out my bullet journal, got out my markers. And I was like, I'm not looking at the screen. I'm going to listen to it because people listen to podcasts
Right,
and I'm going to do
right.
my little journaling. And if I hear something I need to edit, I'll look up and I'll do that. And that was a life changer because it just took such a, I don't know, it removed me from like the being anal about it. You know?
Right, right. Well, and now if you look at it from a spiritual perspective, all of that struggle, all of that emotional struggle is just fear.
Hmm.
It's just fear, and fear is an emotional reaction to some future event that may or may not happen, with you focused on a negative outcome. Because if you weren't focused on a negative outcome, you wouldn't be afraid, right? So fear is basically negatively focused uncertainty.
I
And
think it's
so,
really
go ahead.
difficult in the wellness space, in the spiritual space, when you're wanting to always be in service to people and help people. So you don't want to make a mistake. But in the end, if you step back and look at it, that being afraid of making a mistake is having your own ego a part of
Right.
it, when really you should just have trust and trust in the universe that what needs to come out will come out. And even your mistakes are going to be helpful in some way.
All right, Martha, I officially love you. You just gave me goosebumps. Right. What's so interesting about what you're saying there is the idea of the making mistakes and being fearful. It literally is the thing that we're here to do, in my opinion. This is what I believe. I believe that God, universe, consciousness, yada yada, whatever you call it. I called it God because Mom was Catholic and she kicked my butt if I didn't, right? And I think God is the pure loving essence, is pure love, and I think our fear is our tool to experience love fully, because we have to because you have to have the baseline. You have to you can't understand something without knowing the baseline.
Coming from my astrological perspective, when I think of the word fear, it makes me think of the planet Pluto. And Pluto is the planet that governs transformation. So those places of fear, those moments where you have to make a choice are really where you transform and blossom and become what you're supposed to be and what the divine wants you to be.
Right.
I love that you have Pluto for fear. I love that. Just like that. I was thinking, what would I associate fear with, which planet? And yeah, but like you said, the transformation that comes along with it, because when we like move through fear, like when you move through the hard stuff, that's where the transformation begins. And Pluto's the hard stuff for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let me ask each one of you individually, how did you come to astrology? How was that? How did that become your thing?
I'll let you go first, Ciera, if you'd like.
Oh, okay. Let's do it. I always liked it. You know, like in the classic way of like, oh, cool, I'm a Sagittarius, and I'll read the little blurb about Sagittarius in the magazine, whatever it is. But I'm born literally the minute that the sun moved into Sagittarius. So it sometimes would say, oh, you're a Scorpio based on just the date, like November 22nd is a Scorpio. Oh, sometimes it's Sagittarius. And I always related to the stuff it said about Sagittarius. But then when I like looked into it a little bit more, I was like, oh, it's based on your time you're born. And actually the minute I was born was the sun moved into Sagittarius. So that was just something cool that like I started to learn about. And then that was kind of where I'm a Sagittarius. That's cool. And I'm interested. But then as a teacher, I was an elementary teacher when I lived in the United States. And I had a colleague who said that she set her students based on their astrological signs this year. And really? I was like, wow. Yeah. And I was like, okay, that's weird, but I'm absolutely going to try it. And so she kind of just said, like, I broke them up by element. I put earth and water signs together and air and fire signs together because those are like compatible signs. And I cannot even express how much of a difference it made for my students when I did that. When I had a really difficult student who loved to death, he was a Sagittarius, and I had him sitting next to this poor Cancer girl who like must have been taken in all of his like outbursts just like so personally and so horribly. And so I was like, I got to move her away from him. I got to put him with someone that he's compatible with. And I put this fiery but quiet Leo next to him. So two fire signs sitting next to each other. And he would, do something crazy like fart and burp and yell or whatever. And she was like, ugh. and just kept working. And I was like, oh my God, this is magic. This is magic that I just like, they're compatible. So like, it just kind of like brushed off as opposed to becoming a thing. And so then my next year I used that. I never like told my students that's what I was doing, but the way in which that I helped kind of like the social part of teaching that, you know, nobody like, you know, that's not what you think of when you become a teacher, of having to all the million jobs that you're doing besides just teaching. And I really used that tool. And then I got into it more and more. And then I was like, oh my God, my moon sign is a Capricorn. And that changed everything for me. Finding out my moon sign was a Capricorn was game changer, because Sagittarius is this like wild and free and travel and knowledge. And I fit all of those categories, but Capricorn is like guarded and responsible and has a little bit of like this burden to it that like you don't read about when you read about Sagittarius. And when I got into that, because your moon is who you feel deep down when you're alone, when you're with your most comfortable like people. And that was something that just opened it up. I was like, if this is so true for me, what do all my other planets mean, you know? And then it got to like Tara, my cousin, and I just like speculating, okay, so Harry Potter is a Leo in the books, but do we really think he's a Leo in real life, you know? And just going into those kind of like fun aspect of it. Yeah. And then it turned into taking classes and getting to, and that's where I met Mimi, our other co-host. And then it got to the point of like, no, this is a passion. And it's something that the more I learn about it for myself, I feel like I get to know myself more, but also I feel like it is such a tool for other people when like you meet someone and it's like, okay, like you're a Taurus. I already have a list of things that I know that we connect on or that we might not connect on. And like, I'm excited to see where I'm right or where I'm wrong. But also if I feel like whenever you get annoyed by somebody in general, people aren't trying to annoy you. It's just something that, you know, might hit you the wrong way. And it's like, okay, well, you know, you're a Leo, you're a Capricorn. This is the way in which you go through the world. You're not trying to push my buttons, but what you're doing is like the way in which you see life. And I feel like it just like this level of understanding of people in general has just opened up hugely since I've gotten into astrology. And so that's why like I can't ever go back, you know?
Right. Yeah.
I'm like, hi, I'm Ciera. When's your birthday? What time are you born? Can I get a location?
Hi, I'm Ciera. Fill out this chart. We're doing a survey. So Martha, what about you?
I feel like that's such a difficult question for me. I've kind of been sitting here in my head thinking about how I can even answer that. But I guess it kind of goes back to childhood for me too. I was one of those kids that if you asked me what I wanted to do for a career, I would say an astronomer. I'm not sure what like 8-year-old says they want to be an astronomer, but I was fascinated by the stars and I was fascinated by my horoscope. And I'm a Gemini rising with a Scorpio moon, and Gemini is very curious, but Scorpios are really interested in psychology and going deep into things. So I've always been fascinated with ways to understand people more, to dive deep into everything about someone. And I feel like astrology has given me that. But as I was getting older, I was kind of just following the breadcrumbs of the universe. I was randomly telling people I wanted to be an astronomer. And then as I was getting older, I would just read more about astrology. And then in 2020, right after my daughter was born, I was kind of lost. And every time I hit these points of feeling lost or just not knowing what to do, I feel like I fall into the esoterics, and I fell into really diving into astrology, like understanding it deeply. But of course you can never know everything about astrology, but yeah, it just felt like it showed up for me when it needed to. And when I needed it the most.
That's a great story. And it's a great avenue into a next dialogue, because if you think about the idea of going through your life and searching, you said in those moments, you know, you go into the esoteric. And I think that's really true for all of us. We look for something that's placed in our path as we go along. For instance, I know my co-host, when I met her, it was funny because I met her 4 years before we became co-hosts. And literally I was at a corporate speaking event, and I had done my main speech, and then I was doing a separate workshop, and I was over in the workshop room setting up the space, and it was a dark room. It was dingy, and people were coming in and they were treating it like it was a church. It was completely quiet, and everyone's like trying to not talk loud. And Tamara's owner walked in the room, and the room lit up, and everyone started laughing and smiling and joking, and it was like, all right, there's something interesting about this person. And I was like, and it was palpable. You could feel it. I left the gig and I went on with the rest of my life. And 4 years later, I'm on LinkedIn and I see her face. I'm like, that's that woman. So I said, well, let's find out. So I go on LinkedIn. I'm looking at all her stuff and find out she's a happiness coach. Right.
And she has the happiness.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I decided, I used to have a different podcast called The Interaction Hero. It was a corporate speaker podcast, but I was interviewing professionals. And so I said, I bring her on. So I brought her on, and you know this, I told you guys the story beforehand. I brought her on, and next thing you know, I was telling her my life story. And then and it was like we ended with the, but I think she was placed in the path right when I was starting to flounder, right when I was starting to have those moments of doubt, because I really wasn't enjoying doing corporate work, because I really didn't feel like I was being my authentic self. And I think what is really interesting about your story, Martha, is that you were looking for your authentic self.
Absolutely.
And so suddenly here's something that resonates, that feels right with you, and you followed it. That's so cool.
Yeah, I feel like I'm constantly going through those moments of searching.
Yeah.
I love the like just things kind of being put in your path at the time that they're meant to. And it just made me think, like, in astrology, when you turn around 29, you go through something called your Saturn's return. And it is essentially when the planet Saturn, when you were born, was in a certain sign and degree. And around 29, it's back in the same spot. And it's a big, Saturn's all about life lessons. And so you really get a big moment there. And I had started, the stars made me do it before that moment, but when I was really kind of going into my Saturn's return. And then I had my Saturn's return really dealt with me kind of finding my worth and telling this horrible school I was working at in France that, like, I'm done with this. I'm not accepting to be treated less than what I am. And I stopped working as a teacher for the first time, like, ever. And I took that time that was when I took the time to dive into astrology. That was when I did yoga for the first time. That was when I was like, I need to heal from these traumas that I went through with, like, these horrible, like, teaching experiences that I just went through. And that is when it was like, well, what if I put in all of my effort into a podcast and into, like, diving into astrology? And then when I felt like, okay, I'm feeling good about the astrology, or at least I'm on the right path with that, it's exactly what Martha said about falling into the esoteric. Then I'm like, let's start taking tarot classes. Let's dive in. What's the next thing, So it's like, what's going to happen next?
Right. Oh my God. When the stuff started happening in my life, I started going down all the channels. I was lucky because my mom had her master's degree in liturgy. She was head of liturgical doctrine at my Catholic church. And what that means is that when the priest wanted to do a sermon, he had to pass it by my mom to make sure he could do it. Right. So my mom was way the hell Catholic. And the interesting thing was that when I turned 18, she gave me the best gift that any parent could give. She literally said to me, John, spirituality is a personal journey. You need to find what you believe, not what I'm telling you to believe. And I was like, that's amazing. So I went and I studied everything. I first became an atheist. I actually went back to square one, went back to being an atheist. And I found very quickly that not having a faith in anything leads you down dark roads. You have to have faith in something.
I agree. I feel like as humans, we kind of need to cling on to something, grasp something,
right?
Just have something.
Yeah, absolutely. And so then I studied Buddhism and Hinduism, and I went all over the world. I've been to 30 countries, and I studied, in India, and I studied all through the Middle East, and I was in tons and tons of Muslim countries, and I meditated in the Swami Narayan ashram in Delhi, right? All kinds of just really incredible experiences. But what I discovered over the course of time, and then of course when I had my regression, I realized that Jeshua's teachings weren't Christian per se. They were more Buddhist or Hindu than they were Christian. They were more about the oneness and the divinity within each individual rather than looking for a Messiah. And when I discovered that, then I realized that our thoughts, even when in our moments of being lost, are creating. And so when, there was one of the quotes that I remember from my regression, which is an interesting quote because it's not found in the Bible anywhere, but it's when you seek a path will be laid before you, but until you turn the path back to yourself, you'll never find the doorway.
I need you to write that down for me after.
Right. But the interesting thing is when you think about it, I am looking for a path. So we find a path. So for me, over the course of time, what I discovered was, and it was funny because I discovered this after the fact, and then I went back and listened to my regression, and it said it in the first regression. I discovered that for my spiritual journey, I had to unpack everything because I had learned so much. I had gone through so much training and so on, and I realized that it's far simpler than we can even comprehend. And when I go back to my first regression, it literally says it's so simple we can't understand it. And it's like, there's a famous we all know the story, Adam and Eve, right? Most people mistake that story because it's a myth. It's a Jewish myth, but they miss the point of the story. It's not about Eve tempting, with an apple. Their transgression was they ate from the tree of knowledge, and then they were cast out of paradise, right? They got in their heads and out of their hearts. And I think that what you guys are both talking about is astrology came into your life, and you were like, yeah, it feels right. And so
it's always a feeling.
Yeah. And so you followed the feeling. And how beautiful is that? There are many ways to the source of God in some form.
I kind of want to go back to what you said a few minutes ago, where you said that you had to unpack everything that you learned. And this is kind of something that I'm been working through right now. And I feel like every time we're working through something, you always meet someone where then you have to talk about it and share it. So something I'm working through right now is I get stuck in the masculine energy of trying to understand everything. And really, religion, the feeling of connection to the divine, attaching to the grid, whatever you want to call it, comes from a place of just letting it pass through you. Information passes through you. You're taking in information at all times. It's all energy. And sometimes we get stuck in like, okay, let's try to learn it. Let's try to understand it. And we don't need to. Just let it pass through you. It's a part of you.
Here's something else. Words are imperfect. The words cannot. When I had my regression and Jeshua touched my heart and I left my body and went into that pure unconditional love, those words that I just used to describe that don't match it, don't meet it. It's far more and far more profound, right? It's a feeling, and I think the divine speaks to us through feelings, not through words. And I think those words, that knowledge, that atom, right? So you talk about the masculine and feminine. I think the masculine is the thinking and the feeling is the feminine. And I don't ascribe genders to that. I just use that because that's the terminology everyone uses.
Me too.
I think it's we get into our heads and we start to ruminate on things and think on things and try to figure out how it all works. And then what happens is eventually we wrap a structure around something that's simple, right? And then that structure is, and it's not just the ancients that did this. The New Age movement is doing it as much or more so than the ancient text did. The New Age movement, the 7 levels of this or that or the other thing, and then, the various elements of that's why you talk to the New Age people, they all come at it from different angles because they're all trying to wrap something around something that's so simple. And I think there's truth in all of it. I think that if they're finding the feeling, God bless them.
I agree. Talking about religion, I have an uncle who wrote a book about religion, and my whole family is very religious as well, Catholic. And my mother turned her back on the church, walked away from it when my parents got a divorce. And that kind of made me walk away from the church as well, because you don't choose to go to church by yourself at 8 years old. And but I still find myself saying things like when I'm cleansing my apartment, like only things that walk in the white light of God. And actually, Ciera and Mimi asked me, why do you say that? And if you're not religious. And I was like, but for me, God is not a person or a place, or it's divinity, and we're all God and we all have it in us. And I don't care who's God you're praying
Right.
to or whatever, because in the end I think we're all just praying to divinity. And when you go to church on Sunday or whenever you go to church, I think that's a moment for you to slow down, to come back into your body. Like, it's a moment of meditation, in my opinion. It's not necessarily a moment of worship.
Right. But you know what's interesting about what you just said was that we're trained, and especially when you're Catholic, you're trained from the time you're born, because you're born in sin. Right. Right. And I don't know any parent in the world who held their child for the first time and said, "Ooh, what a wretched sinner." Right. Yeah. I don't know any parent who's ever done that. Right. But we're trained from early age to think a certain way. And what's really fascinating to me, I'm a wordsmith. I love words, and I love the origin of things and sayings. One of the most interesting things to me is that we still recite things from the medieval Catholic Church. Have you ever said "God bless you" when someone sneezed? Mm-hmm. Because the medieval Catholic Church thought that when you sneeze, you were opening a doorway to the devil, and the original phrase was, "May God bless you and the devil miss you." Mm. And still today, people are blessing people when they sneeze because of that medieval Christian belief, right? Like medieval Catholic belief. And so it's really an interesting thing about unpacking, because I think we need to unpack not only our words, but we need to unpack where those beliefs are coming from. Because, brain programming is a real thing. We train our subconscious mind to do certain things. And I believe that's when Jeshua said, "Be born again." That's what that really means, is set down your past and start creating new subconscious beliefs.
I think that's really important in this generation coming up right now, especially because I find a lot of people are I'm spiritual, I'm not religious, blah, blah. But in the end, so many things come from religion, and people don't even understand the things they're saying. Exactly what you said, like you're saying, "Bless you." Where did that come from? It came from religion. So you can't totally shut down religion, because a lot of spirituality is religion without the title of religion as well.
Right. And I think it's interesting when Moses asked the burning bush in that story, what your name is. He didn't say, "I am spiritual." He didn't say, "I am religious." He said, "I am." Period. I just am. And being "I am love" is a really powerful thing. It's interesting. I tell people all the time, for years and years and years, I studied all different kinds of meditation. And I did the breathing meditations, the mantra meditations, the walking meditations, the guided meditations with tapes. I did them, every meditation, fire meditations, candle meditations. And I discovered that each one of them brought me back to the same place. And what that place was a place where I chose to let go. And it was relaxing, and the goosebumps rise, right? I just allow myself to completely relax. You ever wonder why they call it the breath of God? Right? Because every time when you get into a very, very deep meditation, I meditate twice a day for 40 minutes. Now, I just used the word meditation with you. It's not what I call it. I call it sitting in love. And because I think meditation is so overused, the word meditation is so overused, I call it sitting in love, because that's the feeling of it. I get into it, I just sit in that loving state. But I have discovered that if I take that same exact technique and I go grocery shopping, right? And I walk to the store, and just before I go in, I go, allow that feeling to come into my body. As I walk through the grocery store, people smile at me, and people start conversations with me, and I don't start them, and it's funny to watch them. Sometimes they'll see me and they'll double take, and then the smile will hit them because they're not used to seeing it or feeling it, right? And so the goal is to get that feeling and walk through, I am this. This is what I am. And
I think that's much more accessible to a lot of people, because right now meditation, it's kind of scary for a lot of people.
I agree. And 90% of the world doesn't think they can meditate. And the reason they don't think they can meditate is because of this exact thing. They go, okay, I'm quieting my mind. Did you pay your bills? Oh, stop that. Right. Quieting my mind. Did you turn the stove off? Oh, and after the third or fourth time they quit, they say, I can't. And they don't realize that everybody goes through that exact same process. But the people who get really good at meditating are the ones who keep doing it until the quiet times last longer.
Yeah.
And that's the secret.
I just wrote a post about this on my Instagram about how, so many people are very hard on themselves about not being able to drop in. But of course, we're not able to drop in. We are energy. Everything around us is energy. We have Wi-Fi that's in the air. There's radio waves. There's everything. Your phone. Those are like getting into our system, and it makes it difficult to drop in. So you probably won't be able to drop in an hour. Maybe you need to go back in nature and recalibrate for 3 days. Like it might take a really long time. And that's okay.
I have another perspective that I'd like to throw in here. And think about this. Everyone comes to me and they say, how do I connect? How do I communicate? How do I drop in? Right? Well, that is a belief that you're separate. And what I say to them is, it's not about connecting. It's about acknowledging. And when you acknowledge that it's already there is when you start having the experiences. And what's really interesting is when you get into the deepest of meditations, there's a moment it's as soon as the observer moment. Have you had this experience where you literally can watch your body breathe? And your body is breathing on its own. And there's something that you learn very quickly is that number one, that your body is not being breathed by you, right? And number two,
that's humbling.
It's very, very humbling. Number two, your body breathes without effort when you're not involved.
That is very true. How many times do you think about your breath and then you can't breathe anymore?
Right. And now in nature, there's the primal fear response, the fight or flight response. And you guys watch National Geographic shows or any of those safari shows on TV?
On YouTube, yeah.
Okay, on YouTube, same thing. So if you notice that every episode has a doomed gazelle, right? Everyone, right. And that gazelle is out there eating grass in the field. It kind of looks like this, right? And then that big predator cat hits the field. The next thing that happens to that gazelle is it goes and gasps for air. Why? Because it's trying to fill its lungs up so it can run further and faster. Now, Martha, I know you're a parent. Do you remember that moment where your toddler almost fell and cracked their head on the table?
Oh, good. That makes me want to hold my breath.
Right. And you went. You had the same exact primal fear response, right? Most people, when they're in fear, don't think they can breathe, but they don't realize it's not that they can't breathe; it's that their body is storing air to run further and faster. Their lungs are full, and actors on Broadway are literally trained when they go on stage. If they forget all their lines, they're literally trained to exhale and relax all their muscles. And all their lines rush right back into their heads because they break the fear response, because fear is negatively focused on certainty, right? And so they get focused on that negative outcome and they get stuck. And I think it's so beautiful what you just said, because it ties right into that fear of not connecting, or the fear of, and the reality of it is you're already there, because everything you're looking at is made of pure energy. It's an energy event, and your eyes are made of the same stuff too. And that's why we're in God's image, because we are literally in it.
I have an astrology question for you. So,
okay. I don't know anything about astrology. As Ciera will tell you. I have no idea.
You don't need to know anything. You just have to answer your truest experience. So you were talking about how you take a deep breath of love before you go in a store or something like that. I do that too. I notice that then people come and are trying to leech off my energy in a kind of a negative way. I attract a lot of anyone and everyone.
Can I stop you right there? Yes.
That
never happens to me.
Well, that's what I'm going to ask you about,
Yeah.
because you have Saturn in Pisces in your birth chart, and I do too. And it makes you kind of, it makes you very attached to the divinity. But at the same time, Pisces is like, it's ruled by Neptune, and you can kind of dissolve into it, and you don't have boundaries anymore. So I'm curious how you set boundaries for that.
I don't set boundaries. I don't at all, because setting a boundary is focusing on fear.
I'm curious at around like 29 years old, if you went through a period of letting go that fear state, or what was that?
Well, at 29 years old, I started having psychics tell me all about my past life, and I was going through some really major stuff in that time frame between 29 and 35. I was literally going through some really esoteric, beat myself up. I'm a Catholic boy. What the hell is this crap about? Right. I mean, it was really a very, but I'm going to explain this from an ancient text. Well, not really ancient, 1700s, the Vakanamrut I don't know. Have you ever heard of Swami Narayan?
No.
Nope.
Okay. Swami Narayan was a 13-year-old boy who reached enlightenment. And he ended up doing a 13,000 kilometer walk around India to all the holy sites. And at one point on his walk, he came to a village that was, in the evening, they were having issues with an Asiatic lion who was a man-eater, was coming in and eating the villagers at night. And usually when a lion becomes a man-eater, it's because of their, they have a problem with their jaw, or there's a sickness. They can't run and track down something that's a little harder to catch. But he walked into this village at dusk, and people were like, "Little boy, come into our house for the night so the lion doesn't get you." And he refused. And when they came out in the morning, he was sitting next to a tree, and the lion was asleep about 5 or 6 feet away. And they asked him, "How come the lion didn't eat you?" And his response was, "Because I'm without fear, he gave me nothing to be fearful for." And so the idea of putting up a boundary is literally focusing on meeting a boundary. And so for me, I just love, and bad things just don't happen to me because I don't believe in them. And your statement was, you said to me, people come up and they want to leech off my stuff. That's a present moment belief. And that present moment belief is creative, because whatever you ask in God's name is granted if you have faith. And what you said was, these people come up. So you were putting your focus on the fact that they do and that it happens. And so God, source, consciousness, yada, yada, gave you exactly what you're focused on. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it's also just like, if for simpler terms for other people too, like law of attraction, if you're worried of people coming up to you, they're going to come up to you.
Right. And I think law of attraction is the marketing of ancient principles.
Yes. Yes.
And and I think it's great. I'm glad they did it, but I think it's far simpler than even they make it. The thing is, we're creating in every moment of our day, every moment of our life. We are in creative mode because our beliefs are being shown to us, and that is what I would call one of the common truths that you can find everywhere. In Buddhism, they says, "What you think you become, you create your world." Krishna said, "You are the culmination of your thought." The Bible says, "As a man thinketh, so is he." Descartes, the philosopher, said, "I think, therefore I am." Even Shakespeare said, "There is nothing good nor bad, but thinking makes it so." Right? So our thoughts creating our experience is a common truth, right? And in the words of an even more profound sage, fear leads to the dark side. Right. Right. And now here's another one he said that most people don't remember, and it's Yoda said, "Named must your fear be, before banish it you can." You have to actually point it out, recognize it, and
like the noting technique in meditation.
Right. And this is what exactly just happened to you. Is you pointed out. I just pointed out a belief. And the question is, what do you do with it? It's up to you to choose, because it's not for anybody else to tell you what to do with it. It's your path. So
That's what I love about astrology in relation to all of this, because I think, like, you know, I consider myself a crazy, like, master manifester. I am you're a Sagittarius moon. I'm a Sagittarius. We're just like the glass is half full type of energy, you know, and very much like I expect good things to happen to me because they do. And also Sagittarius is like ruled by Jupiter, like luck and expansion, you know, like we have this, like that mentality of it. But there are certain things though, like I can, you know, money for me, I'm like, it's going to work out. No worries. I don't need to focus on it. It's going to be fine. But then like my big struggle is all to do with my physical self. And I have struggled with weight my whole life. I have been bullied. I have gone like yo-yo dieting. I've done all the things. And it's like the one thing that I can't do is believe in myself with that. And that's where you can find that in my astrology though. Like you look at my Saturn, you see where it is in my chart, like you can see how that's the thing. And like what Martha was just talking about with like her Saturn in Pisces and how like the having a difficult time with boundaries, like that's why I love the use of astrology for a tool when it does come to the spiritual, because we, you know, there's certain things that we are experts at and we have all these tools in our toolbox. I think of all your placements in your chart as like, these are the tools you were given. And like, how are you going to best use them? And so then you can see like, this is the part, and like, I'm getting goosebumps talking about this. Like, this is the part where it's like, this is my struggle. Like I can't let go of the fear in this one area, but at least I can name now that the fear is this one area, and I can use my other kind of, you know, I can use all my Sagittarius like positive energies to be like, how come you can manifest the rest of your amazingly magical life, but you can't do this one thing? Like, let's apply it. Let's try, you know, like, yeah.
Right. Well, let me tell you, I'm glad you said, oh boy, you just opened up a can of worms, lady. I think you remember from our interview that I was paralyzed when I was 22.
Yes.
And I was in a hospital bed and the doctor told me, you will probably never walk again. And I said, nope, I'm going to be a stunt man.
Yeah. Your Sagittarius moon was like, nice try. Yeah.
Right. But here's the interesting thing. The first thing I did was take certain words out of my vocabulary. And the reason I did that is because words are creative. And that's why the beginning of the book of John, the best book in the Bible, in my opinion, right? Starts out with, in the beginning is the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, right? In the beginning of your creative process and your law of attraction process and your manifestation process is your words with belief, what you put intention behind. And those words go out into this pure energy that we see in front of us. And then our words and our thoughts are created in the illusion around us. We are literally in God's image. It's created in and around us. I had to take certain words out. The words I took out were wanting, needing, hoping, trying, wishing, and can't. And the second I took those words out of my vocabulary, and you know, they pop in because they're subconscious. We say those words, right? But the more I started naming my fear, right, the more I started spotting the words and changing the words to something more positive and creative, everything changed. And when I hear you say, I can't get a hold of this, to me, that means that's the word you need to take out of the vocabulary is can't. I am doing this. God's name is I am. The thing is, can't is focused on not being able to. And God said, whatever you ask in God's name is granted. And so you have this, I can't. So God said, okay, have that. Right? Because it never said, whatever you ask in God's name is granted if it's good for you. Right? Or bad for you, right? So even in astrology, it shows you the tools you have, and it may show you the struggles that you have, but it does not stop you from overcoming them. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So walking with awareness.
Yeah, walking with awareness.
Exactly.
And here's the other thing is, think about this. I am, which is what he said God's name was, is not I will be, and it's not I was. The past is just a collection of present moment memories. The future is just a place where we set goals for our next present moment. We never experience anything in the future. Everything is experienced in the now, in the positive I am moment, the God moment, right? And if you want to change something in your life, you have to set a goal and then do things in alignment with that goal for that goal to come to you. Because when you experience it, it's going to be in your present moment. So everyone gets stuck in this moment. And they think, I want to be thin. And God, what they don't realize is they're asking for want. They're literally, I am asking for want, because it's so simple. You've got to take out the words that are not great. My favorite word of all time is receiving. And the reason it's my favorite word is because I don't have to have it in this moment, but it's coming in with the word receiving. So say, for instance, and I use this analogy a lot in a lot of my videos, 900-pound man. He cannot say I am a thin man and believe it like the Secret said. He can't believe it. He can't put faith in it because he still can't see his shoes. But that same person can say, I am receiving a healthy body. I am eating better foods. I am walking an extra quarter mile today. I am blank, right? And putting thought, word, and deed together in the present moment. What happens is that thin body comes and surrounds his frame.
I am adding receiving to my vocabulary because that is the thing. That is the thing with so many, like the one thing that we struggle with. I'm going to add that to my Saturn talk too whenever I do my chart readings. Man, yes, because that is the thing where like you don't believe it yet and you feel like you're lying to yourself. And that's
exactly right. And people like you and I, and I'm sure it's in our stars, that we don't take lying well. Right.
It's Sagittarius.
No,
that's
yes.
what it is. Sagittarius
right.
is truth, like blunt honesty. And like, I'm not going to say to myself, I'm so thin, because Ciera, that is a lie. You need to like, but if I am receiving like, oh, I love that. And something that you said really, like with the law of attraction. Oh, I lost it. I'll come back to it.
Okay. Well, let's talk about law of attraction for a second. Okay. There was a time, and you said earlier, money just works out for you, right?
Yeah.
There was a time when I realized that I was going to be a little short on rent. And so I have a prayer formula that I use, and I don't even like the word prayer, and I definitely hate the word affirmation. And there's a reason why, because the word affirmation itself means I'm shoring up something I have no confidence in. I just declare. I use declarations, right? And prayer is the same thing. They tell you to pray for what you want until you get it. But every time you pray,
it's like begging.
You're declaring that you don't have it. Right? So I just declare. So the way my prayer formula works is I go, thank you, God. And when you thank for something, I say, can I have a cup of coffee? Thank you. Right? You're getting it. You're getting it. You thank you, God, for the blank, whatever it is. I always try to make sure that whatever I ask for is positive. I don't, it's like the famous story of Mother Teresa being asked to go to an anti-war rally and saying no.
Only goes to pro-peace.
Right, exactly. And so It's the same thing here. So I make sure that I am focused on a positive outcome. Thank you, God, for the blank. I am, God's name, receiving. Amen. Most people don't know what the word amen means. It just means so be it. It means right here, right now, done. Right. So I said, thank you, God, for the unexpected income I am receiving. An hour later, I walked out my front door, and there was an envelope lying on my sidewalk. Not in my mailbox, on my sidewalk. And I went over and I picked it up and turned it over. It was addressed to me. And I opened it up, and there was a $400 check inside of it from the clinic where I got my vasectomy. I was like, this is weird. Little note said, John, we overcharged you for your vasectomy. Here's your refund. Now, here's the weird part. I paid cash for my vasectomy. I paid $600 for my vasectomy. I don't know anywhere in the world you can get a $200 vasectomy, right? But I didn't ask for how it was going to come. I didn't ask for anything. All I asked was for unexpected income. And that was the most unexpected way it came. My biggest fear in life is that they're eventually going to try to repossess. That was a joke. You can laugh. What are they going to repossess for my vasectomy? Anyway.
Not a whole lot.
But the thing was, even asking how is putting faith in not having. You have to declare, you have to create, but through our declarations. I am creating a joyful, happy life. And one of the, Martha, you said something earlier. I don't know if it was before we got on the recording or not, about being selfless, right? The word ego, most people misinterpret the word ego. The word ego only means self-awareness. That's all it means. And what people mostly talk about when they say ego is an ego out of balance to the negative, to the overbloated narcissistic side. But an ego out of balance in the opposite direction is selfless people. And selfless people get diminished over time. They give of themselves to the point where they no longer feel good. They lose. I'm sure you know a lot of people who do everything for everybody else, but they never feel good. You're going to see those people. Those are selfless people. The energy of the universe, the energy of God is a balance. It's a flow. And you've got to keep the polarities in check, And so you've got to love yourself as much as you love others. And sometimes you'll have people who will see the love and intention with you. And sometimes the most beautiful and loving thing you can do for someone is be the consequence. And that's huge. Ciera, I see you coming, getting ready to say something. Go ahead. Go for it.
I have two moments that I have to share. Well, one moment and one thought. My internet just went away, and that happens to me sometimes, and it'll kick me out of the Zoom call. And I was like, no. And so then I went, you know what? Thanks, God, for the internet connection I'm receiving. And I was like, this is going to be great because it's going to work and it's going to pop me back in. And it popped me right back in. Didn't kick me out. Didn't have to go through the whole deal I normally have to do. And so that's just like in real time.
That's
I
excellent.
Just lived that.
Awesome.
So that just needed to be shared. And the thing that I'm glad that we went back to law of attraction, you started talking, because it reminded me of the thing that I wanted to make note of, was that like stating things with the positive affirmation, which love that for the Sagittarius element of like that positivity. But, I ebb and flow in and out of this. And I guess this is my reminder to start doing it again, because for a while I would have my journal of every morning. I would write down 5 things I was grateful for. And then I would have my 10 goals that I would write every single day, with one main goal I was leading towards, like a kind of like, this is the main one I'm working on right now, but here's 10 of them that I would also like to be working towards, and all stated in the present tense as if it's already happened. Which is exactly what you were saying, where it was like, I would write every day, and I'd write it in French, is je parle français couramment. Like, I speak French fluently, and I wrote it in French every day. And that was something that like, finally, like I had like my click moment of like, I can talk to people. I mean, like one day I'll be like bilingual. That should be my next thing that I write out. But, that was something that I wrote out every day, and it was as if it already happened. And so that I just wanted to make note of, like, I have lived and experienced that. And it's weird how we ebb and flow out of these moments. It's like, why did I stop doing that? I don't really know.
Well, the reason that happens is because we drop back into our subconscious mind and back into our subconscious creation. It's and I've my people on my channel have heard me say this a million times, but I'm going to say it to you guys now. And so you guys who are listening to this, don't worry about it. I'll get past it quick. The most famous Buddhist quote is "Life is suffering," but it's a mistranslation because it was originally translated from the language of Pali into English, and Pali is a conceptual language and English is a literal language. And the word dukkha, which is the word for suffering, when it gets translated to English, has 3 separate translations. And in English, we take the first translation, which is suffering. But if you take all 3 of the translations and you put them into the concept, which is what the original language would do, the actual translation is life is suffering because of our habitual responses to our subconscious mind.
Yes, true. Very, very true.
Right. So we drop into these patterns because, and they say scientifically, they say between 21 and 60 days, you can change a habit by continual action. Yeah. Now, I don't know if I believe there's a set number of days, but I believe that unless you actually sit there and go, I am actively doing this, I am creating something new, something joyful, I am creating, and I when I think of law of attraction, I think of it like placing an Amazon order.
Yes, that's what I literally do. I'm like, I'm placing my order to the universe.
Right. Right. And the cool thing about it is when you place an Amazon order, you don't call them the next day and try to place it again. And you don't call them every day and say, is it coming? You just place the order and you just know it's happening. You know that there's going to be a ring of your doorbell and there's going to be a box outside your door. Right. You just know it's happening. So it happens. And when I manifest things into my life, it's exactly that exact same way. I just declare I am getting this, and I get it. And I could tell you 100 stories of manifestations that have come out of nowhere that people are like, how'd that happen? Right. But even this conversation right now, I mean, before we got onto the recording, I started talking about how to set up a YouTube studio with you guys. Well, you guys were talking about setting up for YouTube.
Yep.
You guys were planning on that. So you were manifesting that conversation into your experience. Mm-hmm. And so here I do come along and I tell you not only how to do it, but how to do it cheap. Right. Right. So, and that's, I mean, it's, we don't realize, and it's going back to what you said earlier, Martha. It's the acknowledgement. We have to acknowledge that we already are creating, and the negative things that are coming into our life are also a creation, from a belief. And it's a matter of looking into the beliefs that we're creating. Look at your experience and say, what is it what did I do to get to this place? What brought me to this experience? And the interesting thing is, if you start doing that, you'll start to go, oh, that's why that happened. And then you go, okay, so if this is happening because of that, then I am living in residual effect. And to step into my divinity, I've got to step into the role of creating the next moment rather than living in the past experience. So I've got to step into the space of saying, I am doing this. I am creating this. I am receiving this. And you start to realize that you are the creator. And what did Joshua say in the Bible? He says, ye are gods. You are creating. You are the creator of your experience. And when you step into that role of creator, wow, does life change. And and let me tell you how how crazy that really is. It's like when I came back to speaking after 10 years off, back to my spiritual speaking, I put it out that I was going to do this thing and set up a YouTube channel. And in one day I had over 300 subscribers. And the even weirder part was I got an email in reply to an email that I had written 15 years earlier about spiritual stuff the day after I came back out.
Not an accident.
Not an accident. No. So, yeah. And it's in this. And when you guys did my chart, I mean, it was you were just saying things. You had no idea the things that I had gone on in my life. And you talked about around 30, some big spiritual thing happened to you. Well, yeah, that's when I found out about my past life stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I had I don't know if it's what it said about my childhood, but I had a father who wasn't very kind. I'm pretty sure the chart said that. Yeah. And I had to go through this development and this process. But it's really interesting as you read the chart, I was like, yeah, that happened. And I think it's kind of like looking at a set of plans, realizing
roadmap.
And realizing that I'm the builder and that I can make changes as I go. And in the end, my building's going to look the way I want it to look, no matter what. Because one thing I don't believe in is fate or destiny.
I feel like astrology has a little bit of wiggle room with that, in the sense that each placement, each planet, everything has so many different ways it can manifest in real life. So it's just kind of like this might kind of happen in this concept, and then it could be a million different things. It's
like when you have a psychic reader, what they're reading is potential of the moment.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing with astrology. They're just saying, here, okay, this is what happened. These are the potentials for this life, and these are the leanings, the areas that they lean into here and there. And then I love the transitions where you're like at 30, you give me an age, and I was like, well, yeah, that totally happened at that time, right? The other interesting thing was your astrology reading, and you don't know this, was matched 20 years ago by a psychic reading, because I had a psychic reading where she basically went through my entire life from the beginning and read everything that was going on in my life and really hit every aspect of what had gone on in my life. And you were pegging everything she said as well. And she was a certified Association for Research and Enlightenment reader. And it's interesting because she literally told me everything I'd ever done in my life, all the way through. And then I run into the story in the Bible of Joshua talking to the Samaritan woman at the well. And the Samaritan woman runs around the town saying, "Come see the man who told me everything I ever did." So he was basically giving her a reading at the well, right? And so to me, it all ties together. The one line, there are many houses in there are many mansions in my Father's house, or something like that. It's like there's many ways to the source. There's many ways to God. There's many ways, and Absolutely. We all come at it from different angles and different perspectives. But when you look at quotes like "He who has no kindness has no faith," right? Beautiful quote, isn't that? Mm-hmm. That's the Prophet Muhammad in Islam, right? And people, they don't take the time to look at the fact that the information is everywhere and it's in all of our stuff. Christians would never believe that was a Muslim statement. Well, not that's wrong. I'm sorry. I stated that entirely wrong. Right-wing Christians would never, evangelical Christians would never even deem to look into the Quran. And I've read the Quran back and front and forwards and sideways just because I wanted to see what it said. And I found love and beautiful things and atrocities. And I found the same thing in the Bible. And, in the Bible, it says in the Old Testament, God sent 2 bears to kill 42 children because they mocked a bald man. And then in the book of John, it says God is love. How's that jive? So when I look at astrology and my ancient texts and all that stuff, I think it's kind of interesting how you were able to tag on to all of the key moments in my life, even though my life came from this very Catholic upbringing and then went off into a very esoteric direction and very weird. But your astrology was pegging it. Absolutely.
That's like amazing validation. That just really I love to hear that feedback. And also it's just so much further proof of exactly what you're saying, that there's just so many different avenues to get to the same type of information. And also what Martha, you said a little while ago of the whole future generations of I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. That's my line, And I also really a huge thing that changed for me was my mom had some pretty negative experiences with religion, which I just grew up pretty much without its presence. It was prayers before bed, but not not any sort of Catholic or, a lot of Christianity in it, or angels, but I never knew that it was religious because I just didn't have that experience. And it was she was discovering her spirituality in a different way. And I kind of was brought up with just a law of attraction being normal, that's just how it kind of came about. But when I went back to school to get a master's in global development and peace, and I had to take a class on world religions, and it was one of the requirements, and my brain was like, oh, okay, great. I have to take this required class on world religions. This is not going to be my cup of tea. Ended up being the best professor. He was a Gemini. Great. And I had the most amazing experiences in this class, and the most this entire program was an international program. I made friends from all over the world, and we they all shared a lot of very religious friends, and they all shared their experiences. And I learned about all these different essentially doing my project that year was the most impactful class and project that I've done. And it just had such we're all, and just people in general. I grew up in, East Coast United States in a pretty well-off, upper middle class family. And I befriended my closest friend from Palestine, who's gone through very intense life, friends from Nepal, and how we all grew up so different, yet we were all just the same. And them having very intense, or religious beliefs that are so integrated into their everyday life. And me, being you want me to get my tarot cards? Tell me your birthday, and just a completely different way of being tapped in, I guess, spiritually. And it really, that was something that just opened my eyes to, I think I I had a negative bias about religion. And
Right.
I really kind of separated that. Like, I think a lot of times people experience, oh, my parents were hardcore religious, so then I went against it or whatever. And it was more like, well, my parents weren't really very religious at all. And I was kind of like, I don't know about all that religion stuff. And then it's like, wow, it's not just the negative parts of it. There's so much positive that I'm really grateful for, whether or not it's something that I practice, just the awareness that when it comes down to it all, like you're quoting all these different texts, like the baseline is the same and we have different avenues of getting to the same type of information.
Right. Absolutely. And, when like I said, I've been to 30 countries, and I used to ask when I would do speeches in these countries, I was like, what's the most important thing to you? Not once did anyone say my religion. They always say my family, the people around them, the people that they love, right? The representations of love in their life, their family. That's always the number one answer. The interesting thing is, I talked earlier about going into the grocery store. I'm going to tell you two quick ones. One of the greatest compliments I ever got as a stage performer was I had a guy come to me. He says, John, he says, he was another stage performer. He says, John, he says, I go and I watch people's shows. He says, and I watch these entertainers come on stage, and that for 15 minutes, they come on stage and they try to warm up the audience before they start the show to get the audience warmed up to them. He says, and John, you walk on stage and people just love you. Why is that? I said, because I love them first. I step on stage knowing I'm here to give them a great time, and we're going to have a good time, and it's going to be beautiful, right? So now putting that into action, in the year 2000, when I was first learning about my past life stuff, there was several prominent people in the metaphysical world. One of them was a famous author, and one of them was a world-class psychic, and another one was a closeted apostle, and then there was me, right? And they had all these prophecies that they had found in all these channel writings about John going to Egypt. So they took me to Egypt. And I had a huge, and I could tell you about this offline, huge spiritual experience in Egypt. But the more profound experience came in that after we did our thing in the beginning, the big spiritual thing with those people, they left. I stayed in Egypt for 20 days. And I was with my wife at the time, and we traveled all over Egypt. And everywhere I went in Egypt, I was treated like an absolute prince. I was treated like part of the family. My wife was as well. We kept meeting just beautiful people, to the point where we went to Mount Sinai to climb Mount Sinai. And when you climb Mount Sinai, you start climbing at 1:00 in the morning. And the reason you start at 1:00 in the morning is because you reach the top at sunrise. And so you're on top of Mount Sinai watching the sun come up. It's the coolest thing ever. But I had gotten there, and I had, like I said, been treated like a prince everywhere I went, because I was treating people like they were princes. I was treating people with love and respect everywhere I was going. I was doing and walking in, right? And I start climbing at 1:00 in the morning. About 2:30, an hour and a half into the climb, on the side of Mount Sinai, I hear, John, which, by the way, is really trippy to hear your name called in the darkness on the side of Mount Sinai, right? But it wasn't God. It was the manager of the hotel running up the mountain to give me his coat because he thought I was going to be cold at the top. Then the next day I came down from the mountain, and I was at St. Catherine's Monastery right at the base. And I'm walking through the monastery, and I was just loving being there. It's a Byzantine monastery, all the Byzantine art and the incense and the guys with the beards and the whole thing. Beautiful. I was like, this is awesome. Loving this. And I hear this, hey, are you American? And I turn around, and this guy's standing. I said, yeah, I'm American. He says, yeah, me too. He says, have you been having problems since you've been here? I said, no, not at all. He says, everywhere I go, people want to fight me. 5 minutes later, I wanted to kick that guy's butt, right? Because that's what he was putting out.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's what he was creating into his experience. And the realization is we create our experience every day. And our interactions with people. I've talked myself out of being robbed. I literally had a guy in my car getting ready to rob me, and I talked myself out of it. I said, no, I just gave him love, and I gave him compassion, and he said, okay, you can go. Right. And it was literally that. I had the Swaminarayan quote of, because I'm without fear, he gave me nothing to be fearful for. there's no reason to fear anything, because fear is simply the illusion of not having love. And if you have love first and you deliver love first, then you get love in return. And so to me, it was a very profound idea of the, this whole spirituality is an acknowledgement that you're already with God, you're already divine, and it's not a find the pathway. I saw the hand raised, Ciera. Did you have something?
No. I'm just thinking about how all the, like how this was definitely a meant to be type of chat, and how I'm like the way in which, when people come into each other's lives, like I needed a type of reset in a way. And I'm so grateful for our chat, because there's so many little things where, like I said, why did I stop doing that? It's like, it's kind of the thing where you're telling me everything I already know, but it's so good to hear it again.
But I do have something specific I want to say to you, and I'm being told to tell you this. And it's a very simple line. Am I equals trying. I am equals doing.
I am equals trying. I am equals doing.
Am I equals trying. I am equals doing.
Okay.
Does that make sense for you?
Yeah.
When you're asking the question of am I, that's not doing it. I am is creating it.
I am statements. Yeah.
Yeah. I am the I am moment. It's not the I will be or I was. It's the I am. And am I, if you think about it this way, am I is I am in reverse. So you're not really getting what you're getting the reverse of what you want. So
yeah, it's like not the am I doing enough? It's like I am doing this step. I am taking this step. Yeah.
And see, I like people that come to me and they say, well, I want to have a 3-story house with a dog, and I want to have the house has to be blue and all this stuff. I say, you know what? How about this? Thank you, God, for the house that I am receiving that will fill all of my needs and allow me to feel joyful and happy in my life.
That fills me with a reverence. I love that word, reverence.
Yeah, and you don't have to have all the details. You don't have to know how it's going to come. You just have to get into the feeling of it and going, I am receiving a joyful life of service. I'm creating an experience where I am bringing something joyful and loving to people's lives so that they can step into their own divinity and out into the world and show the world a loving place. Amen. Bam, done. Big prayer, right? And that's how I said that once, and I just live that. I put out a video a day. Every day there's a video coming out on my channel. I started my channel in September 10th, and I've got over 400 videos on there now. And that's just a matter of just going, I am doing this and I'm living this moment. And, and I guess the real point is making sure that you're not getting stuck on things not happening and start creating them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of beliefs that I need to work on, belief systems.
Yeah. So is your kid inside yet, Martha?
She's waiting outside, waiting for the time.
Well, we've been on for a while, so we can wind this things down. So I wanted to let you guys know that I'm gonna give you guys, and I'll put it in the description below, a link for your listeners. If they want to have a private session with me, they get $50 off.
Wow.
Ooh,
and
thank you.
It'll be in, so if you want to share that there, and it'll be for like a month or so, and then I'll take it down. But because if it's out there, people will use it, right? But I just want to let you guys know that I'm going to do that, because I really want you guys to have an opportunity to share this conversation, because I think that there is so much more in this conversation than us just doing an astrology reading or me doing a channeling or something of that nature.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And every time that Martha and I do a tarot reading together, we pass the goosebumps back and forth. And I feel like I've been doing that this time, because my arms have just been filled with goosebumps when you were saying that. So thank you so much. It's like, we got so much more out of this than just a fun chat.
Yes. Thank you so much.
That was one of the things that I really wanted to do. I wanted to have easy conversations without any expectations of us doing the dog or pony show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just wanted to have a conversation. And I think it makes it much more approachable. It's one of the things I like so much about your podcast, was that not only were you doing astrology, but we were having a great conversation, and it was just really fun going back and forth. And the more you make it a great conversation and conversational, unplanned, what happens is you end up with a much more enjoyable podcast, in my opinion.
Oh yeah. It's like having just the genuine conversations. When it's fun for the people recording, it's fun for the people listening.
Yeah. Speaking of which, so I want to make sure that we stay in touch, because I want to get you on the Spirit Cafe podcast. And what I'd like to do is I'm going to secretly get, because she doesn't watch my stuff, I'm going to get Tamara's information. It'll be hard to get her time of birth, but I'll work on it. And I'm going to get you all that information before we do that recording. And we'll blindside Tamara. That'll be fun.
Yes. We would love that.
Yes.
We would love that.
And you'll just love her. She will love you, and you'll love her. It'll be wonderful. And we'll have all 4 of us on the screen, all 5 of us on screen for that.
That would be great. That would be so great. So
let's stay in touch and get that squared away. And let me end this thing, and then we'll chat after I stop the recording. So, and I won't keep you long, because I know you got a kid in the next room. So guys, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I've really thoroughly enjoyed being here with these guys today. And I have to tell you, when you meet people who are walking their talk and in their, that feeling of love within themselves, you realize that you're meeting people that are awakening to it, or getting it, and they're really starting to really, show that divinity that we're all supposed to be doing. We're all supposed to be stepping into that place. And tools like astrology can really help in that process, because they kind of give you a focus on a direction. And I think that it's really important that look into us. The stars made us do it, because I think that's the greatest name in the world, by the way. And I'm looking forward to talking to you guys again soon. So I'm going to end this thing, and I will talk to you later. Thank you, my friends, for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please make sure that you've subscribed and you like it, you share it, but also comment below it. Let's get this community talking about these topics and spreading this information out far and wide, so we can change the world for the better. Thank you.